everybody, lovely to be with you again. Today we've got the last of the stories about our people from the Old Testament that we've been hearing in the last few weeks. And today we have a story from that part of the Bible about somebody called David. Now there are lots and lots of stories about David in the Bible. There are stories about how he became a king and how he wrote songs, and also, very importantly, how he was the great, ever so many times grandfather of Jesus. Just about in the middle of the Bible are some poems called the Psalms. You may have heard about those, the Psalms. There's a very famous one that begins, "The Lord is my shepherd." That's Psalm 23. And many of those psalms were written and sung as songs by this man called David. But the part of David's story we're going to hear today is from when David was just quite a young boy. Now David came from a town called Bethlehem. Now we keep hearing about Bethlehem, don't we? David came from Bethlehem, and he had 7 brothers. The 3 eldest of these brothers were fighting with King Saul's army. They were the Israelites, and they were fighting against a fierce enemy called the Philistines. So King Saul's army, the Israelites, were fighting the army called the Philistines, and David's family were on King Saul's side. The Philistines, their enemy, had a champion fighter who was very tall and very strong. His name was Goliath. Goliath had sent out a challenge to King Saul. He said to King Saul, "You just send one person from your army to fight against me, and if that one person can beat me, then the whole of the army can stop fighting and your army would be the winners." Now, one day David went out to take food to his brothers who were fighting on the battlefield, and he heard what Goliath had said. Now, David was a person who loved God, and he knew that God loved him. His job so far had been to look after his father Jesse's sheep, and when the lions or the bears came down to steal the sheep, David was quite frightened, but God helped David to be brave. So when David heard what Goliath had said, he began to feel quite brave. He went to King Saul and he offered to fight Goliath. "I will be your champion," he said. At first the king said, "No, you're only a boy. You can't fight Goliath." But David kept on. So finally King Saul gave in. But he said to David, "I'd like you to wear my big strong armour so that you will be protected from Goliath. You need to be protected." Said David, "Okay." So he put on King Saul's heavy armour, but it was so heavy he couldn't walk. He was just weighed down. So he took it all off again and set off to challenge Goliath with no armour, no weapons, except 5 little stones. And he had a sling which he used to swing round and throw those stones. Now, when he got to Goliath, can you imagine what Goliath thought when he saw him? I expect he laughed. Can you imagine what David thought when he saw Goliath? He stood there, he was so small, and he looked up and he saw how big Goliath was. And the armies who were standing by, the Israelites and the Philistines, couldn't believe their eyes. They were amazed, and I'm sure lots of them laughed and laughed. What does that boy think he is doing? Now, do you think David was a little bit afraid when he saw Goliath? I think I would have been, and I think David might have been. I think I would have thought about running away and going back again to my father. But no, David didn't let it stop him because he was afraid. He knew that God was with him and God would make him brave. So David stood there, took one of his little stones, put it into the sling, swung it round and round and round, and hurled it as hard as he could, straight at Goliath. And it hit Goliath first shot. Goliath immediately fell cold to the ground. The stone had hit him in just the right, quite dangerous spot. So David was the winner. He had beaten Goliath, and because he had won, King Saul's army had won. The Philistines were defeated. Thanks to David, and thanks to David being brave and knowing that God was with him to make him brave. He needed to be really brave, didn't he, to face up to Goliath? I wonder whether you've ever felt afraid and you've needed to be brave. I'm sure none of us have ever faced somebody like Goliath, but I know I've needed to be brave a few times when I've had to take tests or do exams when I was studying, or when I've had to go into hospital for an operation. I've been quite frightened. So being brave means doing something that you're frightened of, but still doing it anyway, because you know that you can ask God for your help, his help. When I've asked for God's help, he's helped me just to take a deep breath and say, okay, this is what I have to do. I'm going to do it. And God has always helped me to be brave. And I know he'll do that for you too. Hope you enjoyed our story today. Be with you again another day. The last of our Old Testament stories. We're starting on stories from the next part of the Bible next time, from the New Testament. So until then, take care, stay safe. God bless. Bye for now.